all for agreeing to that. And welcome to the chat. I just do a little commercial for connecting you with yourself at the beginning. All the opportunities that we have in this free community are on the screen. Kelly is one of our panelists today, but he also shares a relationship support group using the Enneagram, and that's coming up on next Thursday, or Thursday that's coming. Melody West, who shares a good grief group. If you're working through any kind of grief situation, that's a great group. And then Anka, every Thursday, Anka's sharing energy alignment sessions that I've been really enjoying. She's got a small audience, so we're hoping more people join her. The intentional living circles are on various Tuesday nights. The one that's coming up is next Tuesday. And Roland and Sarah, two people I know through the International Enneagram Association, are going to share a presentation about Enneagram and prejudice. So I hope you can make that. That's at 7 p.m. Yoga is 5 days a week. We're just finishing up the niyamas right now. And then the Empowered Living Chats is what we're doing now. So welcome, Megan and Janie. Thanks for coming. So today we're going to hear from our wonderful panelists about the Type 4 lens. And before we get started, if you would add your desired pronouns to your screen and also the type that you notice that you are navigating from. If you don't know, that's okay. We add desired pronouns to our screen in both an understanding of the Enneagram, because Enneagram is all about honoring diversity, and then just to show that we understand individualism, which is so perfect for our Type 4 panel today. If you don't know how to do it or you can't do it, just let me know and I can do that for you.
And I would just like to jump in and say big applause and heartfelt appreciation to Nancy for backing up to the previous slide, for all that you do and manage and keep going, and the energy that it takes, and how you've been doing it for years. And thank you, Nancy.
You're so welcome. And in truth, it just makes my day. I woke up this morning very excited to be here with all of you. All right, so as we do with all our events on connecting you with yourself, and because I think it is one of the most important practices with the Enneagram, is we're going to take a pause. We're going to practice a centering. Welcome, Ocean. And find your feet on the floor. If you will, you can stand, you can sit. And just allow a breath to bring the crown up tall, and then let the energy float down the body. Bring the attention inward and downward, and feel your feet connect with the floor and Mama Earth below you. You can let your eyes close, fall hazy, or just stare at something. Take a moment to surrender into a pause. Bring your attention to the space behind your eyes, between your ears, that seat of the observer. Choose to disconnect from any focuses, any thoughts that you had before. And let your attention simply notice your parts and your pieces. In your head center, invite in consciousness, the choice to be awake in this moment, in this practice, and the choice to be present in this moment. expanding down into the body center, noticing those parts and pieces. Consciously relax any places where you notice you're holding tension, resistance. Time to fine tune your posture so there's lots of space inside of you for your breath. And then engage with that breath, taking mindful inhales and exhales. With each inhale, heighten your awareness. And with each exhale, sink into acceptance. Again, being right here, right now, with yourself, with your breath. And then to bring the head and the body together, bring your hands to your heart across your chest. And make note of the sensations that you feel, the thoughts that come forth, the emotions that are here at the heart. And either imagine or take time to feel unconditional love from the inside out. Invite it to come through any trauma, any training, any negative experiences that have caused you to forget how precious and important you are, how much value you have. And let that love support you to show up today with an open mind, real and authentic. Take one last second to just feel each center, head, body, heart, an integrated mind, an open heart, and an awake and alive body. And then when you're ready, come back to our space. And that always makes me feel better. So as I said today, we're going to talk about heart types. The last one, this is our last panel. I'm so excited for it, but I'm also sad because these have been so much fun. The Heart Center, I'm just going to review it just a little bit. It is the home of point 2, 3, and 4. It is the home of emotional intelligence. It's where we're reminded that emotions are not something to become or deny, but rather messengers, feedback. Feedback as to where we are directing our thoughts, the values, the beliefs we hold, feedback around the actions that we're taking. So this feedback gets blocked when the heart is when we're disconnected by trauma, training, or negative experiences. Also, when we are taught, because I know I was never taught to use my emotions as feedback, but rather taught to become the emotion, to gain attention, or to deny the emotion to try to maintain a certain image. The heart center is the home of the law of three, which reminds us about opposing forces. And when those opposing forces are held with neutrality, how a third force, a reconciling force comes forth. So, new possibilities. The invitation at the Law of Three is to know yourself, to know others, and the world around you. And this is really big for the type four. The type four's journey is their growth path is to self discovery, self actualization, self awareness. And with the law of three, we are invited to see our challenges and the polarities that we face with curiosity, to see them as opportunities instead of, problems, curses. The heart center is the home of the heart chakra, the invitation of affinity with ourselves, that that feeling, that sensing of unconditional love at our core. And the heart center or the heart chakra supports connection to ourself, an understanding of who and why we do what we do, why we think the way we think, why we feel the way we feel. So perfect for our panel today. The heart center has a focus that is emotional or feeling based. The question that us heart types, because I'm right there, is am I loved, valued, and seen? And often these are unconscious until we learn how much we're doing it. We're often worried about what do you think of me? The emotion is often rooted in an underlying lack, shame, or guilt, a lack of self love. At two, a lack of self worth. At three, and a lack of identity at four. Any quick questions or any questions about the heart before we go to the four? All right. I see some new faces that came in. Welcome. All right, type four. Um, Can't wait to hear more about what our type panelists think about these descriptors, because I know David and I had some delicious conversation about one of them, and so did Katrina and I. So, type fours, these are descriptors I pulled from different teachers. Individualist, visionary is one I made up, and thespian. The type four, as with all types, is not an island. It pulls the people with this personality lens pull on four other types, and those are three and five as the wings, and two and one as the pathways. The essential quality that we find at point four and the point four in all of us is this idea of identity when we can lovingly accept the depth, limits, and mystery within ourselves. It's when we can have a rational mind that embraces the unique aspects of ourselves. So it's this equanimity that we'll talk about later. It's balanced emotions and mind and a calm body. The gifts and talents that are associated at point four is originality. And this originality comes with vision to see beyond what is and to create something never experienced before. These people really have a gift of getting out of the box, an ability to explore the depths of reality, including its darkness, to create and keep stories. They're the storytellers. They remember a lot of details. Great people to reach out to when you're trying to remember the past. They are often empathic with the ability to match others where they are. The hidden desire at point four, or the lens of the personality, is a juicy reality with outlets for creative expression and ways to prove value and gain appreciation. They want to be seen, like we all want to be seen. The childhood sensitivity for the 4 personality is around image, and they have a deep concern around what they believe others think about them. Their sensitivity is sensitive, being sensitive. The lost message that the little type 4 as a child really could have heard more is, I see you and you are special to me. It's okay to be yourself. I have often spoken with 4s and experienced this myself. I feel like I have a lot of 4 in me. As a child, being told you're too much, you talk too much, you're too active, um, your clothes are too crazy, you're just too much. So they really needed to hear, you're enough, you're okay. Moving over to the holy idea, and the holy ideas are for all of us to embrace. The holy idea at point 4 is holy origin. And it's a true sense of being beyond seeing ourselves as individuals. Katrina and I had a great conversation about this yesterday, and we came up with it's the owning of essence, the essence of who you are as an individual, but you're more than that individualism. It's a reminder that you are perfect, whole, complete, and unique. You're one part of the diamond's sparkle. It's an invitation to settle into your birthright. The fixation is what causes the 4 to forget their birthright. And it's described as and this is mental, a mental melancholy that often that's often a frustrated mood that exposes these dueling forces within the type 4 lens. They often have a push-pull. I want to be different, yet I want to fit in. I want to be controlled, yet I want to be spontaneous. I want to be seen, but don't point me out. So, yeah, that's what causes them to forget. Also, the underlying there is the basic fear, and the basic fear is around not having significance, not being unique or special, to be seen as ordinary or normal. And you can also see that push-pull there because I want to be special, I don't want to be normal. The virtue, this is the place at the heart. The holy idea is the head, the virtue is the emotional place of self acceptance, self actualization, and self forgiveness. It has this quality of equanimity, a balanced mental and emotional state. And I feel like in myself, when I unpack the virtue at 4, it allows me to be human. It allows me to have a spectrum, to be good and then not so good, to be perfect and then have flaws. The I really look at the 4 as this reminder that we're human with a full spectrum of experiences. The virtue is lost with the passion. The passion is the contracted state, like the fixation is the contracted state. And the passion is described as envy, something's missing in me, grief and lack, a disappointed focus and longing. What is missing? Falling into fantasy over reality, dramatic storytellers with a victim stance. They fall into temptation to have a whimsical, self focused thoughts and temperamental perceptions. And the hidden complaint is I don't fit in and I'm different from others. So now we're going to hear from our type threes. I'm going to share these questions that are on the screen.
Nancy, can
Yeah.
on that last slide, I noticed that can you back up to that other slide?
There you go.
After Holy Idea, listening to all the fixation, basic fear, passion, temptation, I'm like, could you please tell us something, just a quick little bullet point on, and what can we do to not be constantly drowning in all that crap? What is the instruction?
So the way out is through
Yeah.
the practice of the holy ideas and the virtue. So the
Okay. Thank you.
reminder is to keep coming back, to keep coming
Okay.
back.
All
Yeah,
right. Thank you.
yeah. So I'm going to take down these questions. If you wanted to take a second to screenshot them or something, that's okay with me. And I've got them. Our panelists have them, but I want to see, I want to see all of you. David is on a time crunch, so he has to leave. So I'm going to put him first for this first round of questions. I'll give each person a turn to go first. But David, we're going to start out with you. And would you be so kind to share, uh, to introduce yourself and share briefly about your journey with the Enneagram and especially what brought you in and what keeps you here? And you're muted, so I'll give you a chance. I've known David through the Enneagram Prison Project, and I'm so appreciative of him joining us. Go ahead, David.
Hi, Nancy. Good morning, everybody. So introduce myself. So I'm David. I live in Southern Oregon, where it's snowing. I've been involved with the Enneagram for about 20 years. I was introduced to it actually by Russ Hudson when he came and did a 3-day program at the place where I was getting certified as a coach. And at the time. And back then, I was very much more of a Myers-Briggs, let me understand personality, um, not really dealing with it from a spiritual or even a psycho-spiritual perspective, more from just a traditional coaching, I would say superficial look at personality. Um, I was immediately drawn by both Russ and the Enneagram because I was had been so frustrated with Myers-Briggs in a variety of ways that aren't worth talking about. And Russ is, of course, Russ, who kind of just channels stuff, and it was delightful. And that piqued my curiosity. But what I would say my serious personal involvement with the Enneagram started in a different school, was with Chestnut Paez as part of their personal growth, personal development program, which is a deep dive into the more spiritual aspects of the Enneagram, very Gurdjieffian, if you would, in terms of focus on centers and things like that. Um, and um, the Enneagram has always, for me, sparked both um, a fascination with its depth of psychological insight and its ability to be a great structure for incorporating a lot of learnings that we're now getting in modern times that fit kind of nicely into it. So it's more of the framework on the psychological side. And on the spiritual side, I've been drawn and continue to be drawn to it as a pathway for personal growth and development and opportunity. Um, and I think that's what's kept me here. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And now I'm very heavily involved in teaching it. Uh, um, you know, I've tried coaching and I do some coaching, but I much prefer teaching to coaching. And as Nancy said, I was a teacher guide in the Enneagram Prison Project, and I've worked with other largely marginalized groups, CASA people. Some of you may be familiar with CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates, and also in drug rehab. And there's a couple of prison reentry programs in Southern Oregon that I'm working with as well. So like that kind of stuff. Oh, and aging. Yeah. And I've started the whole aging and the Enneagram thing has been a real trip for me that I kind of got sucked into through the back door. But wow, what a fascinating experience that has been.
Oh, I
So
want to hear more about that another time, David. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Kelly, we're going to go to you next, then Katrina, and then saying, introduce yourself. What brought you in? What keeps you here?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Kelly. I live in Colorado. I was introduced to the Enneagram in like 2000 or 2002 maybe. But I went to Naropa to get a degree in transpersonal psychology, and I had got an internship at People House, which is kind of a personal spiritual growth center in Denver. Great place to have an internship because had really good supervisors. It was kind of like being in private practice immediately. But there was a teacher there. One of my supervisors, Lori Olson, was also an Enneagram teacher, and she did workshops and so forth, put them on. So that became part of my learning is going to her workshops, and we also were using the Enneagram in counseling people. And so we talk about in supervision, the Enneagram types of people and how that's playing into their therapy and so forth. So that was a wonderful introduction to it. But personally, I've used it ever since then for myself because I think it's a wonderful stimulant for growth, personal growth. I mean, there's like the Myers-Briggs, you're kind of that type. There isn't as much of a like, how do you grow within that? But in the Enneagram, there definitely is. So, and I've seen in myself going from low functioning to higher functioning in my life, and it pretty much follows the path that Enneagram lays out. So I keep practicing it. I have as Nancy said, a Enneagram-based relationship group where we talk about different aspects of relationship and the Enneagram and related topics. So I am a psychotherapist. I'm a couples counselor. I do a lot of couples counseling, and so I use the Enneagram. Probably half the time with couples. Some of them are too dysfunctional to even think about something so sophisticated. They're just trying to keep from killing each other. But people that are a little more advanced, definitely use the Enneagram with that. And it's a great way to understand differences. I think that's the strength of the Enneagram is, if you've got a partner that's a 2 and an 8 or something, very different, but how do you understand each other? How do you accept each other for who you are? And that's the strength, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Helps
Hmm.
Paul and I every time. It's the saving grace. Thanks, Kelly.
Hmm.
Katrina, same question. How did you get in?
Okay.
What keeps you here?
All right. Hang on. Hang on. Be right there.
Ah,
Hey, let me introduce the flamboyant, artistic, romantic aspect of the Enneagram. So, can you see my
yes, we
wild
see.
glasses and my beautiful jewelry? And yes, I'm just when I was reflecting on this, I was like, you know, earlier in my life, I thought, oh, it's because I want to be seen, I want to be noticed, and I want to be unique, right? But more recently, I think it's the beauty aspect. It's like, oh, I love this beautiful necklace. And yeah, I think part of it's just that. So I don't want it to just be all about my narcissistic need to be the center of attention. But in this panel, I thought it would be helpful for me with these three guys who I've seen a little bit, and they don't have the sort of dramatic affect that I do in my life. So I thought I should bring that in. I actually made lots of notes, and so let me try to be brief, which is hard for me. But my journey with the Enneagram really started a long time before the Enneagram. I was, like I think probably many fours, an unwanted baby, very dysfunctional family, uh, attachment issues, no connection with parents, but lots of exposure in the 60s. I was born in 1960, so all that music, since there was nobody around in my life, there was music on the radio and TV. That was how I learned about life. And so I can't live if living is without you. And all of those songs that were about the desperate need, just call me angel of the morning. You know what I mean? All those songs, right? And so much desperation for love and being like the main person. So that's why I was like, oh, okay, this is what the meaning of life is. This is what we're supposed to be, is desperate for love. So unfortunately, that evolved into extreme love addiction and codependence for me because I didn't have any love as a kid. And so I also wanted to say, I forgot my notes here. When Nancy asked me to be on this, I'm like, I'm really reluctant to do this because even though I've been on this personal growth journey for all these years, I still feel totally effed up. And I'm also dealing with depression, which it doesn't look like because I always kind of show up in these things as kind of a happy, bubbly person, which is a part of me. But I'm also dealing with trauma and years of unprocessed grief, which are all coloring my ability to show up as a healthier four, which I would like to be seen as in this highly public position. But the other thing that I wanted to say is at 17, I was launched into this very deep, involved adventure of the human potential movement, the personal growth movement, the self-awareness thing. That was all my life. I just did every weekend. It was a new workshop. It was a new thing. And then what was missing from that was, okay, so the other thing that I want to say is, as I've told Nancy, I want to be respectful about the Enneagram since that's the topic of this. But as I started learning about the Enneagram, it's like, well, why are some of these people so much easier to get to the healthier stuff? And learning about my astrology was like, oh, wow, now I see why there's all this nuance and that fours are so different. And learning about my astrology really helped me see, like, whoa, I have some really intense challenges that make the Enneagram growth, that help me get stuck in the difficulty part. So I recommend astrology. The other thing that was really helpful for me was learning about NVC, nonviolent communication, and all of my unmet needs, right? It was like, God, no wonder I'm so easy to fall into all these unhealthy things because I have too many unmet needs for connection, well, I won't go into all that. But what keeps me practicing is, I don't practice it very much, but whenever I tune into these Nancy's groups, it's like, oh yeah, I need to remember this. And because here's one other thing I wanted to tell you about it. So I got into it when I was going to this church in Austin that was filled with UT professors, academic intellectuals, very smart people. And we were doing Ouspensky and Gurdjieff and Maurice Nicole and all that heavy duty intellectual academic framework of learning about the Enneagram. And what I noticed when I wanted to tell people is, like, for me, this is like the three wing of, like, let me do some name dropping. Let me see how special I am because I have all these, I have all this status kind of stuff, right? So I was like, yeah, no, I don't need to frame that. So one thing I'd like to say about being unique and different is oh no, that's question 2. So yeah, I think the main thing that has kept me feeling the value of the Enneagram is just the awareness of how I can go into melancholy and the fixation of melancholy and depression. And Also remembering that I'm not the only one, like the teachers talk about, we're tortured, and I have been tortured a lot with my own inner blah. And so, yeah, remembering that, okay, this is an aspect of my personality, the lens I look through. It's not all of who I am. So that's helpful for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Katrina. You gave me, and I forgot, beauty is part of the essential quality. So thank you for that beautiful little fun start. And I really feel like I just want to acknowledge you. You've demonstrated what I was talking about is that spectrum. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and mentioning the depression and showing up like this bubbly person, and that the four demonstrates that spectrum for all of us. And you did a lovely job. And the other thing I really appreciate you bringing up is the overlay, NVC, astrology. It's the Enneagram really isn't a thing. It's a collection of truth, and it's the same truth that you find in other teachings. So thank you for that. All right, Sang, thanks for your patience. And will you introduce yourself? What brought you in? What keeps you here?
Hi, I'm Tang. I During COVID, I was exploring typology, and I had a deep dive into Myers-Briggs. And then in the typology community, a lot of people would tag themselves as INFJ or something, and then the Enneagram type. So I got really curious, and I just kind of got swept by that new wave of Enneagram that's all over the internet now. Um, I never like took a course or anything, but I remember just reading the descriptions of each type and just feeling so amazed and relieved because it showed me that wow, everyone is just wearing a personality mask, and all these people I thought were wow, they're so okay and I'm not okay, but actually everybody is like, having something they're running away from and having self-defeating patterns. And just that made me feel like that I'm not alone. I'm not so different and broken in a negative way. So yeah, that really blew me away. And since then, I just kind of bit by bit learned about the Enneagram through Beatrice Chestnut and Uranio, uh,
Mhm.
their podcast, and I participated in an online group, just on Meetup, about Enneagram before your group, Nancy, just a few sessions, and then I just find it very, very, very fascinating and very deep, and I love the spiritual aspect of it, the oneness, really. Uh, well, I want to say that oneness for the four, the non-separateness is so like a salvation to me. When the first time I learned about it, I just felt so good. Like something deep inside resonated with that. So yeah, I really related to the that slide where it says the holy idea for four is that oneness. Um, guess what keeps me coming back is I guess mostly when I forget, I suffer, and then coming back to the Enneagram just relieves the suffering.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love the first thing you said is noticing we all we all we all have the potential to suffer or not. And each path is difficult for the person of that lens. Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm going to start with David again, just because I want to make sure we get David's comments on this, because the next question is about the descriptors, the individualist, the visionary, and the thespian. And my question to the panelists were, are these words you prefer as a descriptor? And then I'm going to add in, are there other words? So David and I had a great conversation because one of them doesn't fit for him. So David, I'm going to open this question up to you. Can you talk about these descriptors? What fits, what doesn't fit, why, and what else is better?
I don't know about what else is better. I mean, that's a deep, yeah, that I don't know. Um, I mean, certainly the individualist, I think is it pretty much captures, a core of most fours, right? That I know. I mean, certainly for myself. And you've talked about it in your description, and I think the other fours have it as well. They've alluded to it. There is a sense of uniqueness, and I think fours for themselves, but it also is for others as well, right? I think fours tend to, and I see every person as kind of unique. My fascination with typology started with why are we all so different, right? Not why are we all the same. And my issue with Myers-Briggs was, there are more than 16 buckets. Don't be giving me these 16 buckets that I don't like, and I don't like half of them because I don't think they're well organized or whatever. So, that whole, specialness, and seeing it in myself, but also recognizing it in others as well, I think is there. Visionary is an interesting one. I think for me, fours and fives are, but fours are very deep, right? I mean, they kind of like peel the layers of the onion all the way down to the core all the time. And typically for fours, it's obviously around feelings. And, that's kind of the challenge that fours have is, we're peeling layers that other people don't want exposed or don't want to acknowledge or don't want to deal with, right?
Or
And
don't even see.
or don't even, yeah, and for me, I'm just kind of compulsive about it and have trouble controlling myself at times with doing that. Um, and I think there is a visionary aspect of that. The thespian one, I really kind of fell off the rails on, and that's my own prejudice and bias. And I and watching Katrina earlier, I was thinking, wow, I can see it more clearly now because there is fourness in that, and there is thespian-like behavior. So, for me, thespian is acting, and I'm in my teaching and in my thinking and my structuring. I that's where I put threes, right? Threes are performers, right? And whether they're performing on stage or performing in other places, it's the value is in the output and the result and so on. And and for myself, I don't. You nailed it in the description earlier. I want to be seen as unique, but I definitely do not want to be in the limelight. I do not want to be. As soon as that spotlight is on me, I'm looking for a way to get out of it, right? And I recognize that's not true for all fours. Okay, so I'm a self-pres four, and I think for some fours it's a different kind of a response. I also have a five wing, a very strong five wing. Fours with three wings, would obviously have also a different thing. But a thespian is somebody who calls out, and I had an interesting discussion with two of my fellow Indian nerds about this just yesterday because I was asking about this, and kind of where we got to is I've always seen myself as an interpreter. I'm a compulsive interpreter. I want to see the world and then I want to come and tell you how I'm interpreting it because not because I think I'm right, but because I think there may be value to you in what I'm seeing. I'm like connecting the dots and I'm saying, wow, I'm having a good time connecting the dots. Don't you enjoy this connecting the dots? And of course, sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is you got to be kidding me, you're wasting my time. But I think the thespian, is the actor that steps out of role to explain the role, right? That's what a thespian was in the old days. It was an actor who was on stage, and I just learned this when I was taking exception to Nancy calling me a thespian, is that in the old days in Greek theater, they were the ones who would step out of role and then explain what's going on to the audience, speaking to the
Hmm.
audience directly. And that is kind of like the interpreter role, right? And the interpreter role that I feel very dearly. And the discussion yesterday that I had, which was with Doug and Kathy Waters, was got me to the point where I was thinking, gosh, that's not an essential quality. That's a personality tick. And all this time I'm thinking this is a gift that I'm sharing with the world. And it's just another aspect of how I'm kind of playing out my own little egoic game here. And so it really got me to thinking about it. So, that's kind of my summary on those things. I think the romantic is a phrase that's quite often used for fours, and I've identified with it not because of the romance aspect of it, but because of the idealization aspect of it. And for me as a four, I have a very strong sense of at the same time feeling you talk about these paradoxes. One of the paradoxes for me in a four is fours tend to be, I see myself this way and others is being very mature and informed, very, kind of worldly, being able to take in many perspectives and experiences and whatever. And at the same time, being extremely naive, especially in relationships with other people, and just stumble into relationships with rose-colored glasses and stumble into situations, completely ignoring all of the information that we've had, that we've accumulated, which is, I think, kind of a romantic. That's my kind of euphemistic interpretation of the romantic, which is that would be the one. So,
Thank
thank you.
you so much that you covered so much there. I think we really are getting the flavor of the four. And thank you for bringing up the instincts and the wings and how that's going to again give flavor. And I think we have different wings and we have different instincts on the panel today. So really, we haven't gotten into that in the course in depth yet. Just introduce that they exist, but those of you that are doing the course with me, can really start to hear that. So, Sang, I want to go to you next, and then we'll go Katrina and Kelly. How do those descriptors land with you, Sang?
The individualist out of the three kind of resonates the most for me because ever since I was a kid, I remember just like isolating myself and feeling separate from the group and never be able to blend in with any group and just kind of like constantly watching the people world on the outside. And then soon after, those early experiences, I just kind of embraced or identified with that, like identify with, okay, I'm just different. And I started, I have some memories that they're very clear to me in which there was this acute feeling of, oh my God, I'm feeling a lot of pain. I'm not like blending in, but huh, if they are not gonna see me, then I'm just gonna separate myself. That kind of feeling, I remember that very acutely. So individualist kind of speaks to me. Um, and the second one, what was that? I'm trying to pull up.
Visionary, visionary.
Visionary. That one doesn't speak to me very much. I don't know why. Because I see a lot of other types as visionaries too, and I don't see fours necessarily as they have like a vision that's quite different and they fixate on the vision. I don't know if I'm interpreting it right, but I don't relate to it too much. But I definitely feel the vision part in me in that um I I see the world through my lens, it's through an idealistic lens. Like this is the way things should be, and this is the beauty, and this is the good. And I want the world to be that way so badly, and I hate it that it's not. So I guess I see the vision in that way, in kind of like through values and beauty. And then I had never heard of thespian before, so it was interesting to learn about that, and definitely see some of that and some of the dramatic parts. Um, I if Well, like looking at other sources of Enneagram, like sometimes I see the romantic or the idealist, and those kind of speak to me a lot. So yeah, that's where I am with these labels.
Thank you. Thank you. We saw your little connection to one when you were speaking with the should be, and that connection to the frustration triadic group um, that fours are in with ones and sevens, I believe. Um, you both bring up the romantic. I personally didn't like that one. That is a very common one, but I feel like it's misunderstood because people keep it so literal, and every type can be romantic.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, well, I forgot to bring up Dreamer. I've never seen
oh,
that.
Dreamer,
Oh,
yes, I've
Sure.
seen that
yeah,
one.
good
Yeah.
one. Good
Okay.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
like
Oh, I'm going to write that one down. Dreamer is another good one. And I think it goes with when like I talked about the fantasy. Yeah.
Or the visionary.
Or the visionary. And Katrina, go ahead and talk about that. We'll move to you. Because you
Okay.
and I talked about, you like that one and I like that one, but maybe you
Yeah.
can explain it a little bit for the audience and for Sang.
Yeah. So the question was, tell me again the question, being unique or different?
How do these descriptors land with you? Individualist, visionary, thespian.
Okay. I want to just say for the group, maybe this is my inner rebel. But I listened to those podcasts and I was like making all these notes of everything that was like alive in me and that I wanted to share. I was like, oh, this is important to share. And I was like, how does it fit in with these questions that need to be asked? So I'm not, as usual, following the rules, but I'm going to do my best to be compliant. So when I was reflecting on when did I start feeling this urge to be different or that I was different, and I'm not going to go into too much of that, but one thing that I reflected on is that I guess when I got to be about 12 or 13 and I was seeing evidence of the counterculture around me and some older brothers and sisters of my friends and things that they were doing and saying, and I started thinking about it, I noticed that um, my very mainstream American family just felt shallow to these things, these other interpretations that I was learning. And so I guess at that point, I would be like having a more idealistic way of looking at life, at the more deeper, meaningful, purposeful things that were more valuable than being a football player or, whatever the typical mainstream American. And to me, that just had a lot more juice. It was like, wow, this feels more juicy. So that was one thing. And then one of the talks when I was listening to the podcast that you recommended, and one of the guys said, it's okay to have all that idealism, but not be owned by it. So I wanted to speak to that because, as I mentioned, I got into all that human potential movement, personal growth movement. I mean, I was totally absorbed in that from age 17 through age 50, basically. And what I realized is I was always feeling like such a failure because I had this idealistic thing that I was getting from all these events and workshops and healing sessions and trainings and the beautiful sitting with my spiritual teachers, and they were all talking about the peace of mind and the equanimity that could be achieved if we did this practice right or this practice right. And I never got there. And the idealization that I should be able to accomplish that and I wasn't, was causing me so much suffering. So when I heard the guy say, it's okay to have the idealization, but don't be owned by it, what gave me some relief was not the Enneagram, but it was listening to that Alain de Botton, that Stoic philosopher guy, who was like, it's okay to be good enough.
Hmm.
Good enough is okay. And so I was like, man, I just spent the last 40 years of my life striving to be in this idealized thing. And so that was really good medicine for me to be like, just good enough. you know? So I wanted to say that, and there was something else about this that I wanted to say. About the good thing about being a four, the visionary. So the visionary, what did I write about that? Okay, so here's, we all hear so much about how the fours focus on what's missing. And as I told, or can focus on it, as I told, and sometimes I talk so fast that I don't always articulate my thoughts exactly right. So I apologize for that. But we all know that saying, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So when you're always aware, like, this is fucked, why is it so bad? We should be able to do better. So that's one of the gifts of being a four of the visionaries. Like, you can always see like what's missing. Well, then the visionary is, how can we make that better? And one of the things that happened for me is I had been divorced in my mid 30s and I was starting to date, and there was no online dating back then. So I went to this place in Austin, Texas that was like in-person dating, and they had me fill out this questionnaire about which Baptist church I went to, or which, all these things that had nothing to do, that were like mainstream America, Texas in the 80s or 90s. And I was like, where's the questionnaire that asked me who's my guru, what is my astrological sign, what holistic vegan or vegetarian diet? This is in the 90s. And 200 people that I knew in Austin were just like me. And so I was like, the light bulb experience of, and had just started getting into online because the internet was just starting to get going. So I had this light bulb experience of, I need to create an online dating site for new age people. So I spent 4 years and about $40,000 pouring myself into creating this clearmindsopenhearts.com. And it started as dating, but very quickly I realized there were a lot of needs for like what we later called ride sharing, and what we later called Airbnb, house exchange. So I had all this visionary, because I lived in an intentional community at the time. So I was like very aware of the need for connection, different ways people can connect. So I just wanted, and then similarly, I had one in the early 2000s where I saw what was missing with alternative transportation, and I wanted to create an electric bike store. So that was in 2004. So the visionary thing with fours can sometimes, always in my life, I've had hundreds of these light bulb experiences where it's usually 15 to 20 years before it trickles down into the mainstream culture. And yeah, so that was one of the things, is for fours that are like, what's always missing? I'm so, flawed because what's always missing? It's like there's this other, the gift of that. So yeah, I wanted to mention those two things.
Beautiful,
I'm
beautiful.
sorry if I'm talking too long.
No,
I'm trying
no,
to be aware of the time. I just want
you
to follow.
gave really great real life examples, and I think those are so important. But so thank you. Kelly, we're going to share that same question with you. As individualist, visionary, lesbian, do you resonate with them or no?
Honestly, when I read this, I'll get to all three of those. But when you said, "Are there other words you prefer?" This phrase came to me like the agony and the ecstasy for four, um, because we
Yeah,
have
the
we have
polarity.
this full range. Especially when I was younger. We talked about depression. I was depressed. I was isolated. I grew up in this isolated area of the mountains. So I was alone a lot. Um, and Yeah, I was fantasized a lot about things. I had this it was fantasizing about it was the Vietnam War was going on, and I fantasizing armies were invading the valley I lived in and how I would defend it, and just different stuff like that. Um, but yeah, it was I think fours can suffer a lot. I think it's
Mm,
because we identify highly with emotions, and so if our emotions are not great, then it just feels like that's all we are, and we're suffering. Our being is suffering.
yeah.
But the flip side of that is that we can get in kind of ecstatic states too. I think whether it's sometimes it's in the flow of creating something, creativity. Sometimes it's romantic. I'm romantic. And that romantic energy feels ecstatic. Um, yeah, so we have the full range. Um, yeah, for me, it's actually meditation that helped kind of get out of that. Uh, being so identified with emotions, because in meditation, you're watching your thoughts come and go, but actually watching emotions come and go was what's the most helpful thing for me. So I'm not my emotions, but I have emotions. And so it helped me disidentify so much with emotions. And so I can feel sad or angry or whatever, but it doesn't feel like it takes me over as much as it used to. So yeah, just getting back to these terms, individualist, I think that's a good one. I think there's kind of a dark side and a light side to that. The darker side is I'm different and I'm less than, or I'm different and I'm left out, or I'm different and people don't understand me. Um, and that's easy to go to. But individualist in terms of like I'm creative. I see things a different ways other people don't see it. I can see, the visionary. I'm very visionary. In work, worked in the corporate world. I was a CEO, and I was always thinking about what's going to happen a year from now and 2 years from now, and what business decisions need to be made to address, what's coming in the future. So that came in handy with that. Uh, Thespian was that shocked me a little bit when I saw that one, because thespian I think of as like an actor, and I'm not an actor. But and then I was thinking, what does Nancy mean by this? And my guess was that fours are dramatic. I don't know if that's what you meant, but yes, it's in fact, because we kind of feed on emotions, we'll create drama. If things are too boring, we'll stir the pot. We'll do something that, you know, somebody upsets somebody, or do something people aren't expecting, or whatever it might be. Uh, for less functional, we might call it drama queen or something like that. But I'm not sure what you meant by that one. So there you go.
Thank you. So how I interpreted thespian, David mentioned just a little bit. I understood the meaning of thespian as being the one who stepped out of their role and brought in realness. David was saying they stepped out of their role and was explaining, and that broadened my understanding of thespian. But the way I understood it is they stepped out of their role and they brought in realness. So the quality of the four that I personally love so much in all of the people who come from this four lens is their ability to talk about the elephant in the room, to talk about the problem as much as to talk about the success. Like it's equally okay where there's many types who just want to look at what's good, or the three, the seven, or just want to look at what's bad, what can go wrong, the lens at the six sometime. So that was my idea of the thespian. But you all just did a fabulous job of just one simple little question. We're just really getting to feel the depth of the four. So I want to start with you saying, and then I'll go to David, and then Kelly, and then Katrina on this next question. This next one is just about maybe a personal story, because they help us so much to understand your journey. And the question is around when you could see you were caught in your fixation, and how the holy idea might have been so far away, or that you accomplished it, or and maybe the story includes where you could see your passion and where you could see the relief from the type virtue. So do you have a personal example that you're comfortable with to share in this recorded event? So do have your boundaries, and Sang, we'll start with you and then go to David, Kelly, and Katrina.
I'm sorry, Nancy. I wish I had prepared for this question, but can we come back to me?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, David.
I'm tempted to say the same thing, but um, um, I don't know so much of a typical, a specific story, but kind of a more of a summary story. For myself, my passion I experienced as a young adult and as a mid-adult, as having a hole that needed to be filled with something from outside of myself. And sometimes it was material objects, sometimes it would be relationships, sometimes it would be not so often, but occasionally money, sometimes it would be experiences. But there would be a hunger to fill a hole. And there are myriad of examples. And uh, you know, uh, early on in my career, I was really heavily involved in the application of computer technology in spaces where computers weren't used. This is back in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, early 90s. And and I would just obsess about wanting personally to own, you know, computing devices as they came out. And of course, they were all originally junk, but I would be obsessed with thinking if I just had that next thing, it would be the answer, right? And it would, and that passion would just like overtake me, it literally
Mm,
consume me,
mm.
and my attention and my emotions and the path for me to equanimity or balance uh, really required a lot of work that around self-awareness across my three centers, right? Um, and that's how I've seen that harmony for myself is because typically when I would get in these throes of passion and trying to fill the hole, I was dominated by a particular center. And it wasn't always the heart center, it could be any of them. And it was really learning to kind of take an inventory across all of them and just stand back and to be present with it, and that was I would say my first feeble attempts at self-development, self-improvement with regard to my passion. Yeah.
That is a great example. That is a great summary. Yeah, thank you. Kelly, what do you want to share?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I could share with this, but I think the one that's probably most core for me is emotional sensitivity that can cut both ways. Because when I was a kid, um, I think my dad was an 8, and I had an older brother that was a 7, and he was a troublemaker, and my dad was really hard on him. My dad came from a German family, so it's this really like strict, uh, strong work ethic kind of thing. So my dad was really hard on him, and then I came along, and I was this sensitive little boy, and my dad didn't recognize the difference. He was just really harsh with me, and I just melted. It's hurt me so bad to be treated that way. I felt really wounded because was so emotionally sensitive. Um, and that, it took me a long time to unwind that, few decades really, uh, to that deep depth of hurt that I felt. But the flip side of that is that of emotional sensitivity, which not just fours, but I think a lot of people have, is that I can be emotionally sensitive as as a way of connecting with people, and really see and empathize where they're at and have compassion for them. And as a friend and as a therapist, fours, including me, can really go to the depth of emotions with people, and it's not scary. It's like, yeah, whatever, wherever you are, I'm right there with you. And so as a therapist, that really is a great quality, I think, because people just can fall apart and it's okay. I'm there to hold
Yeah.
them. Yeah, so there you go.
Thank you. And I also, there is a comfort. I think it's the force connection to two, the two energy comes in is I know I feel comfortable falling apart with a type 4. There is a comfort there that the 4 just innately has that energy that they make great therapists because people can show up real because of the energy that the 4 has. So thanks for that example of you using it every day with your clients. Katrina, do you have a story for us?
Can you read the question again, Nancy?
Yeah, it's just about a personal story that includes your awareness. Preferably if I'm sort of thinking you can do this, where you just recently notice, oh my God, that's my fixation. That's my fixation. And then knowing, oh, the holy idea is where I need to go. Can I get there? How did I use it? Did I not use it? Or the same thing for the passion, where you notice, oh God, this is, that lack coming in. Um, and then, how did equanimity make it better?
Okay, well, I will first want to backtrack a couple of things. Sorry again, once again, being a rule breaker. When we were
There's no
talking
rules.
about, okay,
There's
when we were
no.
talking about the descriptors, like being a romantic or the drama, like I definitely have a very negative drama queen. I can own that. I'm embarrassed by it. I hate it. But there's another part of life that is just passion. It's not bad. It's not bad because it's not equanimous. It's just groovy that there is an aspect of life that is filled with passion and passionate expression. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an act. It can be an actor or anybody who's just feeling the passion and expressing it. So I wanted to just, hats off to that quality that some of
Yeah,
us have.
yeah.
Not to take away from other people's interpretation. And then jumping over to what Kelly just said about the thing of, well, I can't remember the way you said it, but yeah, it's like people will often come to me and in my role as a counselor, not even in my role as a counselor, but just people that I'll meet, and they'll just start telling me all this heavy stuff about themselves. They don't know anything about me, but I think there's just some kind of energetic psychic field that somehow they pick up on that, like, wow, I've never said that to anybody before. I just met this person 5 minutes ago, or something like that. I'm kind of being dramatic to make the point. But there's that. Okay, so now back to your question. Okay, so my story would be like 500 stories of over and over and over falling into ridiculous, obsessive, love addiction, crazy, horrible, awful, romance stories, wanting to fill up that empty place inside. And I guess I would have to say that I don't quite know how to connect this, but something I said to you, Nancy, is learning about the Enneagram and trying to follow some of the teachings when I was in so much suffering of this in my, mid 30s to mid 40s. I probably the biggest thing, more than the kind of the holy idea of origin, which was helpful because for me, I lived in an intentional community based on TM, transcendental meditation. And I noticed that over the years, when I would try other forms of meditation like mindfulness, for me, going to origin, that essential spiritual quality for the 4, doing the TM practice and transcending into what TM calls the unified field that kind of exists below consciousness, it's like that was so nourishing for me. And when you do TM, you do it every day, twice a day on a 20 minutes, twice a day, or it's not really TM. And so that was like such good medicine, that rhythm. And that kind of relates to the teachings that I've heard in the Enneagram. It's really important for fours to have healthy, rhythmic, healthy things. So they don't just constantly, get laying in their bed, sucking their thumb all day, which certainly have spent a lot of days like that. So, similar to the and what I wanted to say is I noticed that mindfulness was not as helpful for me because often when I was anytime I would try to watch my thoughts, it would mostly just my emotional tendency to get hooked would just pull me back into some drama story. So using the mantra in TM was much more helpful for me as a long-term meditator than practicing mindfulness. And I would just throw that out in case other fours might find that as a similar helpful consideration. But the other thing that I just can't stress enough for me, probably because I have such strong Mars Pluto energy, is I have to do physical activity. Like I have to walk or run or do aerobic dancing or aerobic exercise every single day if I want to be functioning at least 20 to 30 minutes a day. It has to be there, or it's just a necessary thing for the balance of all that intense tendency to be emotional. And when I do it first thing in the day, as a self-care thing, which is why I'm never available to do anything else before noon because I have to do that self-care. I can function at like 90% better. So for all fours, if you're struggling with that, just try that. Exercise something that really gets you really, because for going to one, it's going to the body. It's going to the body-centered instinctual thing. It's really nourishing and putting energy into attending to your body and physical energy. So that's a really significant thing for me too. So yeah, I don't know that answered the question right, but that's best I can say.
It's so important what you just brought up, and it hasn't been mentioned, but that, your question earlier, tell us what we can do. And thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. It is so important. The four is in the heart center, in the depths of the emotion, and then they're right next to the head center. So whether they have a five wing or not, there is a strong influence. They're feeler thinkers, and they can get caught on that gerbil wheel of feeling, thinking, feeling, thinking, feeling, thinking. And it is, yes, 100% so important. And I think all teachers, if they're coaching a four, will say you have to have a routine, and it has to be a routine. And you have to keep it going of moving the body, going up into that body center at one, but from the awakened one, not the contracted one. So it's not about getting it perfect or, but it is about staying in integrity with yourself and connecting to the body. So I really, really appreciate that.
And
Thanks
I
for.
just want to ask the other fours. I mean, it is critical medicine for me. And I've learned this over my adult life. If I don't do it, immediately fall apart. Do you guys have to have that routine of some kind of physical activity to keep yourselves functional? Or is it just because I'm such an extremely unhealthy four that I have to do it?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. I need particularly outdoors. So if I go to a gym or something, it's kind of
Yeah.
But being out in nature and feeling the earth and walking and move my body, yeah, that feeds me.
Also for me, being in nature.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, for me, I'm still a project with regard to getting into my body center. So, I mean, I've spent a lifetime avoiding it. I'm a real thinker, feeler, thinker, feeler, thinker, feeler. I'm on that gerbil wheel and kind of live there. And so, but I will say I have a hunger for structure. And if I don't have it, I create it out of nothing and live with it as a source of comfort. And sometimes the structure involves physical things, and sometimes it doesn't. And I would agree as well with nature. 10 minutes in nature is like 10 hours any place else, right? So it's just nourishing. So.
Thank you, David. And I think you bring up there's another polarity at 4 because the 4 has both a gift and a curse with chaos. Our earlier attendee, that word chaos, because it's in the chaos that so much creativity can happen, but they have also an innate need for structure. And that structure is what helps them to find that equanimity and to remember that. I love how Katrina put it, that remembrance of essence. Yeah. All right, Sang, we gave you, do you have more you want to add, or should we move?
Sure. Yeah, again, I apologize because I don't know. I listened to the two lessons and I just reflected so much, and I was like, yeah, ready to deep dive into the type 4 structure. But when I'm presented with the question, I just go all over the place. But I can think of an example when it's my academic journey. After coming to the US at the age of 15, I felt extremely disoriented and lost in this society. And then I was presented with the challenge of finding the path, right, the career path, and I had no idea. And I tried four different majors, and all throughout those years, I was assailed with so many feelings of inadequacy. And there's some like, look at you, everybody has graduated and they stuck with their thing, and they have good jobs now, my friends. And I'm still stuck in my third major. It's 6 years into my, undergraduate journey. What a loser I am. And but throughout that journey, I kept just I wanted to stay authentic to myself, so I didn't give up. But by the time my third major was failing, I had a breakdown. One day in the morning, I just couldn't go to class. I couldn't bring myself to go to class. It, um, it wasn't speaking to me, and I don't know, I was in a bad place, and I just broke down in front of the mirror that day. But yeah, so I can see the fixation on what was lacking in me, and the comparison aspect with others, and a lot of like a melancholy that's like a slow burn, like a slow cook. Not I was not depressed in a very acute way, but all throughout those years, I was like constantly struggling with these feelings. And then when I broke down, that was the first time I saw in the mirror like how much I was torturing myself all these years. And I remember seeing the little boy inside me that was just kind of in the corner, um, crawled up into a ball and just like with all these wounds on him. And yet all these years I was constantly just like whipping him and seeing what's wrong and what's missing, what's how he wasn't good enough. And I just left him there alone all these years, and he never I could never hear him, I guess. But until that day, I really saw him, and I just apologized to him, and I promised him that I would, from here on, um I would do my best to not treat him that way again. And I know I will fail again and again, but I will I will keep coming back to care about him, to check in with him. And I've been on that journey ever since and never abandoned that course. So the I don't know what I can bring into this in terms of that virtue, but that kind of saved me in a big way. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you for that vulnerability. And I feel like you did bring in the virtue of seeing, you couldn't see it if you were not in equanimity. So not if you didn't have a balance, like came into consciousness in your mind and had about an understanding of, hey, this is an emotion I'm having, but I'm not this emotion. So I really feel like you brought it in beautifully. The reason I ask this question and the reason I try to flesh it out, and I hope you all take it home with you, is because we can learn the Enneagram in our head. I did this. I knew everything about every type, and I had it all in my head, and I was really smart. And I was chatting with a friend, this was many years ago, a type 1, and we started to laugh because we said we have it in our head, but where are we using it in our everyday life? Where are we recognizing, oh, this thought is my fixation. Oh, this emotion is my passion, and I can choose something different as an action, as I can use my emotions as wisdom instead of becoming it. I can choose my thoughts. My thoughts are malleable. I can integrate my mind and I can see another possibility, which is so um, part of the four in all of us. So that's why I ask it, because I encourage you to every day notice your personality. Where is it showing up? How is it helping you? And how is it hindering you? Because it will do both. And having the ability to talk about it, having the ability to laugh about it is how it becomes transformational. So,
And cry about it.
and cry about it and laugh about it.
Now, I just have to say something that none of these people, and anyway, the passion about envy. Nobody talked about envy. Envy is like my constant, icky, green eyed companion. It's always sitting here, always in the back of my mind. Every day I have to be like, oh yeah, I'm wanting things. I'm wanting my life to be like their life. I'm wanting it to be things to be other than they are. And constantly I have to go back to, you know, gratitude. That's what they say. One of the good practices for four is like appreciate what you've got. But none of you guys talked about envy. I didn't talk about it either. But man, it's just always there. Even at Jesus, even at 65, still.
So let's start with there, because I'm going to just do one more question and then we'll open it up for the audience to ask a question. So, what have I missed? What else would you like us to understand about your four lens? And I'm going to combine 4 and 5 together. Is there something that advice you would give to your younger self? Katrina, start with you.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah, I have some things here I highlighted. Okay, so about my younger self, what did I put here? It was kind of like that. I put a note. Younger self. I would tell people just to have the good fortune, maybe, to really work on developing to not have expectations. You know, envy also thought of as craving in Buddhism. Um, you know, wanting things to be different than they are is just such a trap for never ending painfulness. So somehow developing the neural network wiring in your brain that every time you catch yourself doing that, stop it, because it can get so ingrained. It got really deeply ingrained for me as a kid and very problematic. Um, the other thing, I can't remember your question, so I'm just going to share what's real for me. I think one of the main things I wanted to share with my fellow fours is to avoid the heartbreak and misery that I have unnecessarily subjected myself, is to not expect your friends or your therapist that are not fours to be able to meet you at the level of depth and understanding that you need to really start to feel a therapeutic alliance. I was thinking more along what I did when I was in trauma is I would want my friends to be able to attune to me. And they weren't fours. They didn't have the ability. And something that I think is important for other people to know. I've talked to Nancy about this a little bit, especially as we're starting to hear more about attunement in the sort of pop psychology world, is it's great if you can feel empathy with somebody. Like if you're, and I'm not just talking to therapists or counselors, but anybody who has a friend that's a four. Okay, if you're a friend of a four, and you're struggling with that relationship, you may be feeling empathy with them, but if you do not have the skills or the training or the natural ability to reflect back to them in a way that they know that you're feeling attuned, like a hug or a touch on the knee or a oh or or some expressive way that lets them know that you are attuned, it's going to be painful for them. It's like torture to like be bearing your soul, this precious, your precious human experience, and then just to be met with like this flat affect. It's just like, fuck you. What is fucking wrong with you? It's rage that comes up for me. One of these teachers on the podcast talked about fours can be angry. We're angry because we're not met. We're not met in our deep place, this precious it feels like pearls before swine sometimes.
Mm.
So I'm being real dramatic here. I'm sorry, but I just want people to understand what would help you understand it for better. It may be an unrealistic expectation. So what I would say to my fellow fours is do not torture yourself by trying to go have cognitive behavioral therapy with some 28-year-old therapist that your Medicaid will pay for that is totally going to end up being a freaking torturous experience for you because you're not going to be met where you need to be met. So please, that would be one thing. Let me just see if there's anything else quickly here. I know I'm being very fast and dramatic. I'm sorry.
I'm
Um,
gonna, Katrina, I can come back to you.
okay.
David has to leave at
Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry.
11:41. No, what you shared was beautiful, perfect.
Okay. All right.
And we
Sorry.
can come back if you have more. David, I know you have to go in a few minutes. Go ahead and tell us, uh, what did we miss? What else do you want to share before you have to go?
Yeah, so and I apologize for the time confusion. It's um, anyway. What I frequently like to say about how I think fours tend to be at times misinterpreted is fours tend to be very self-referential. And I think quite often fours are therefore confused as being self-centered. And it's not the same. My experience of myself and many other fours I know is that's not at all true. They're really not self-centered. And in many ways, fours tend to be way too other focused, not enough self-focused. And so the question is, why do they come across as being self-centered? And I think that fours are self-referential largely because they experience the world from the inside out. And when they share their experience, they do it from the inside out. So the starting point is themselves, but that doesn't mean that that's where their focus is, right? Their focus is, and certainly for me, quite often is on others, and yeah, and I think that's one thing about fours that I think it would be good for I would like people to know. And for fours, what I would tell the little fours is that that missing that missing thing that hole or that empty space. The sooner that you can find ways to pour yourself into that space, the better off your life is going to be. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's every four that I've worked with and known has said the same thing it's God, I wish I would have known that when I was young. I wish I would have learned how to do that when I was young. I wish I would have had that experience. So,
Beautiful. And I love, and I'm going to change the words in the workbook to represent what you just said, self-reference.
Yeah.
right.
I really, like I said, I have a lot of four in me. I can really identify with that. Thank you so much, David. I know when you have to go, you just go. And
Thank you
let's
so much.
thank you for
Really
being
enjoyed
here.
it, and I've enjoyed listening to all the other fours as well. And thank you for your patience and kindness. And again, I apologize for my time issue.
It's all good. We're
David,
real.
bye.
We're real here. All right. Let's see. Kelly, do you want to share? What did we miss? What do you want others to know? What would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, I think the one thing along the same lines that was just shared about being misunderstood. I think I think fours can come off as a little aloof sometimes uh, because we're kind of scanning the environment. We're oftentimes you feel left out at the beginning. You know, like if you come into a group, you know, my tendency is to kind of like, oh, I'm not really part of things. Um, but inside, we're craving connection. We're craving authenticity. We're craving to be seen and accepted. Uh, and it's not just us. We want to give that too to others to help people feel seen and heard and loved. And so that's if you can kind of open the door a little bit, and that's what's waiting for you with the four, is you can really feel seen and loved and heard, and we want the same thing back. And so it can create a really a depth of connection, an authentic connection that most people don't experience. So that's a gift we have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm thinking of my granddaughter who I don't know her type, but she has a lot of four qualities. She really starts out shy. And
Right.
I feel like that's what you were
Hmm.
describing. Um,
Hmm.
Cautious. There's a cautiousness. And I think it's that leaning into the head center. Uh, that's where that comes from. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you, Kelly. And
Hmm.
Sang, what would you want to add or say to your younger self? And you're muted, so don't forget to unmute.
Um, there are quite a few nuances that I learned from the audio lessons that were really helpful to me. For example, talking about invalid feelings. Fours think of themselves as very authentic, and their feelings are very authentic. And I definitely, you know how in psychology people say your feelings are valid no matter what, and it's validating. And I think fours really need that because we felt invalidated all our lives. But it was my opening to find out that some feelings that we're feeling are just part of the gerbil wheel thing. It's a Helen Palmer said it's a conditioned feeling, like when it's a habitual feeling that comes up a lot, like a pattern. And we can just like, sometimes I find myself supercharging that feeling, like, okay, it's about to fade, but then like I want to hold on to it sometimes and I just have more thoughts and then like prolong the feeling. And not to say that those feelings aren't real, but sometimes it's not our authentic self. Um, So that was really important for me to look at hard. And also, I really resonated with what Katrina said about angst. Um, I have a lot of rage in me. I have a lot of hate in me, actually. I have come to own that because of my upbringing and just a lot of angst against how the world is and all the hurt and pain, and I project it outward sometimes. Um, I saw a meme yesterday that says, I'm one of the saddest and happiest person I know, and I'm one of the nicest and meanest person I know. I resonate so much with those two polarities. Um,
Yes.
what would help me? I think I guess for people to know that I deeply, deeply crave connection, intimacy, but I am very, very afraid. I'm very afraid of being vulnerable, being rejected, being abandoned. So that explains my pattern of that push-pull. Like I withdraw a lot, um and I'm starting to look at that as I need to um learn to get out of that pattern because I can inadvertently hurt somebody. Like they can feel like I don't care about them when I withdraw. So yeah, there's a lot of things, but I'll just share those two.
That was a lot. And thank you. Thank you. I just want to mention on the audio classes that both Thang and Katrina referred to, those are, I will send those to anybody that wants them. So just reach out. They're from the Shift Network. They did give me permission to share them. They are long, they are in depth. They feature Russ Hudson and Helen Palmer. Helen's no longer teaching. David Daniels, who is now passed on, and Jessica Dibbs. So they're about 6 hours worth of learning total. Just ask me and I'll send them to you. So before I pass it over to questions, Katrina, you got about 2 more minutes of anything else you wanted to share because I cut you off.
No, I would just say that I struggle with, especially since IFS parts has gotten to be so popular. The fours, there's so much about your own nurturing adult self, cultivate that part, right? And yes, that's true. And yes, I can help myself with that. But there is just something. I mean, we have a freaking loneliness epidemic. There is a literal loneliness epidemic in our country. Millions of people are not having enough connection and intimacy. And I just believe that I beat myself up my whole life thinking, oh, I'm just a love addict with a four and all that stuff. And, no, we need to have more connection in our communities. So, yeah, I struggled with how much can I treat this suffering that I experience with my IFS parts work versus where can I find some kindred spirits in Montrose, Colorado, with all the people that I can't relate to? where y'all are on the front range, y'all are surrounded by people, but out here in the hinterlands, it's like totally. I'm starving for some to be touched and to be kissed and to be resonated with. So yeah, just I want to give compassion for other people that are struggling with this and say, hey man, you're not alone. And also let's collectively energize on a multidimensional level. Let's create that we can all somehow meet our human needs for connection. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
guess that's enough of my drama queen
No,
ranting.
that what you're bringing forth, Katrina, is beautiful. It's what I was talking about earlier about the four is not afraid to bring the elephant into the room. Everything you said is a fact.
Yeah.
Look at the people nodding their heads. It's a fact. And the fours bring it into the room. So thank you. Kelly, I know Kelly has another event at noon. So when you have to go, go. And thank you so, so much for being on the panel.
Kelly.
Yeah,
But
and I would say, I just want to say to Katrina, I was glad you're here because you exhibited more of the feminine qualities of four, I think. And I think us guys have that in there somewhere, but it's not as strong or doesn't come out as easily. So I appreciate you.
Yes, my challenge to you is to wear many bright colors and jewelry at your next meeting.
Okay.
Kelly brings up a really good point that we've talked about at other panels is the gender training that affects the type. So there is gender influence, there is your religious, your culture, your experiences. A lot overlays the type. No type can be put in a box, and no people of a certain type are going to look the same. But with that said, we have a good amount of minutes. What questions Or maybe Lisa, who is identifying as a type 4, do you have something to add? Or Nina raised her hand first. So Lisa, we'll get right to you. But Nina, go ahead. Oh no, Ocean raised her hand. Sorry, looking at my screen wrong. Ocean, go ahead. And then we'll hear from Lisa.
Hi everyone. I'm very grateful that I showed up this morning, and I'm really honored um, with the depth of vulnerability and insight that all the fours had, and your masterful, heartful holding and Nancy. So yeah, I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. Um, yeah, I learned so much. I have a dear-hearted friend. One of my closest friends is a four. Um, and yeah, and I think one of the and she's trans. Um, and we used to be romantic partners actually. And you just touched on this, Nancy, um, the intersectionality, and I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this. Like, there's, I see this for me too as a person who's um, uh, biracial, multi-ethnic. I'm a Black woman, multiracial. And there's things that can get overlaid. And speaking to, and even just in gender, like not in the heteronormative gender as well, being a woman, and there's certain complexities and systems to navigate um, in 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 this world, and they get the intersectionality gets foggy sometimes. What's what am I dealing with that has to do with systemic racism uh, and homophobia, all that stuff. Where's
Yeah,
and how does that get mixed up in um, the egoic or the keep me safe personality
right.
structure and the defensive strategies that are naturally inherent with four, and how to um, nourish that wound, be it from being in this world that where you don't where things are kind of stacked up against you,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
because of
yeah,
what you look like or your choices or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if I said that properly.
Thank you. Yes, you did a great example of the overlay. I've got 3 other people to go, so thank you, Ocean. So glad you're here. Lisa, let's hear from you, and then Nina, and then Megan.
Yeah, thank you. First off, I just want to say that I really appreciated hearing from each of the panelists. Like, there's nothing quite like personal experience, to really make your message resonate. We can hear about like statistics and, just read things in books all day long, but then hearing from other type fours was just very comforting. And so I guess what I took away mainly is that like how we all so want to connect with others, but then, we worry so much about like, is this a social norm? Like, does the other person feel the same way? That sort of thing. And so I guess where I'm going with this is I really enjoy chatting with people over Zoom. And I was wondering if since I'm new to this group, do you ever have sessions where there are like breakout rooms where people can like support each other and, share their experience as well?
Absolutely. The panels are been different, but come back next week. We're going to have lots of discussion depending on the number of people. If there's a lot of people, we'll do breakouts. If not, we just have discussion in the small group. So absolutely.
Yes. And you meet on, is it typically Fridays or?
Yeah, every Friday, unless it's not.
Okay.
Same
Okay.
time. So always check the website. Yeah.
Okay. I can only make one of them a month, but I really do hope to see the rest of you in the future because I do feel like that this was very nourishing. So thank you all.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Nina, what did you want to share?
Are we still asking questions?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
okay. And I'm sorry if this was already a prompt or question that was answered earlier. I work from home, so I had to step away when I got a call. So I may have missed it. So if this was answered earlier, just tell me it was answered earlier and we can move on to the next person. But from hearing everyone share what I did hear, there's just such deep depth to the complexities of the emotions experienced and that people are in tune with and how it shapes their life. And I'm curious, just because that seemed to be such a theme with that, how do people ground themselves? And again, I'm sorry if this was already asked earlier.
I think they did talk about Katrina especially brought up the topic of getting outdoors and being physical. Do any of the panelists want to add anything there?
Yeah, I would say again, ways to disidentify so much with emotions for fours. Like for me, like I said, meditation, where you consciously watch the emotions come and go. I often imagine they're clouds passing through, and you don't resist it. You feel it, but then release it and let it go. And it's not, but is there part of us, our higher self, I would call it, that's watching that process happen. And so it's not that we are the emotions. We're the observers. We're the awareness. We're this higher self watching them come and go.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. All right, let's go straight to Megan's question because we have 6 minutes left.
Yeah, again, I identify as a four, so thanks to all the fours for being here. I always love these panels because it's like I feel such a sense of connection and I hear things that I didn't know and things that I did know. And so thank you to all of you. So here's my question. I think, I'm trying to simplify it when maybe we can't simplify it, but all the other numbers seem to be um, they're easier for me to understand, even though I identify as a four. Like twos just want to help people. Nines just want to keep the peace. Eights want to be, it's a sense of strength and they lead with that strength. Ones, perfectionistic, they see the world in kind of these, this is the right way to do something. And I still get stuck on fours. What is at our core? What is that one thing that we can identify? Is it to know ourselves? Is it to be authentic? Is it to be different? Is it to feel? I still get stuck on what is like all the other numbers. There's that natural place, that core. They want to be helpful to others. They want to keep the peace. What is it about the fours?
So I
And
first
am
want
I
to say, and then we're going to hear from Katrina. Um, as a person that identifies with the two lens, I don't want to help everybody all the time. So it's really do listen to the other panels because that's a misunderstanding of the type. The two is trying to be loved, and we have a belief that helping people, while it's very joyful for me to do it when I don't have lack, it is it's it's what makes all of my suffering. It's at the root of all my suffering that I want to help people because, and I see Susan shaking her head in her two-ness with me, because we can be intrusive and we can be invasive and we can be, we can help where people don't want us to help. We can be
Inauthentic.
yeah, we can be inauthentic. Thank you, Katrina. We can be so inauthentic. Oh, yeah, I really want to help you with this smile on our face when we don't. So let go of that. And then just know every type is the things that you mentioned, every type, that's not what they're actually, that's their struggle. that has both their gift and their challenge. But Katrina, you raised your hand. You have something you really want to share with
Yeah.
Megan. Go ahead.
I don't know, Megan, if this would be real for me or the accurate response to your question in tomorrow or another time, but what came up for me very clearly was this image. And I've learned to love this about myself, and it's helpful for me to be around other fours so I can get like acknowledgement. But we love complexity. Like I've had a 9 boyfriend and a lot of 9s in my friends, and their level of want everything to be comfortable and simple is like, I'm just like, what is freaking wrong with you? God almighty. Think, and well, here's the image that the complexity of nature, like a kaleidoscope. How mind-blowingly beautiful is a kaleidoscope, right? Like just endless changings. And the way I like to think about, I'm getting chills. I'm so stoked with myself right now for saying this. But it's like, think about like a compost pile. Like it takes in all of these weird complexities of life, right? Like stuff that's decaying and the dark side of life. And yet the alchemical process that happens in a compost pile is the 4. Like, what are we about? Your question, I'm just really riffing right now, but like, we're about the alchemy. We're the alchemy of the process of all the intensity of life, the complexity of life, and we're the alchemy of the compost pile that is transforming the that intense stuff into what grows the beautiful flowers of life.
The
So see,
beauty. You bring
this is
forth
like
the
the
beauty.
artistic, poetic, romantic part of the 4 that's coming out in me. You know, that later today may be just like completely self-absorbed on what a horrible person I am. So yeah, that's kind of the answer is the 4 is the alchemy. Anyway, that's what's alive in me right now. I hope that lands in some people.
Did it land, Megan?
No,
No,
sorry.
it does. No, what you said definitely did. And I get that. And I think, I don't know why I feel like I want to simplify
Yeah.
this. And so for the 2s, we could just say, okay, they want to be loved. I still get that. It makes sense to me. And then I think about the 4, I'm like, what is it at our core?
We want to be known, I think.
We want to be what?
To be known.
Be
To be,
known.
No.
yeah. To be
Be
seen, to
seen,
be
heard,
known,
understood.
to be understood. And it is complex. And so every type wants to be loved. Every type wants to be known. That's where you get into the holistic Enneagram. Every type wants these core desires. The type lens is about how you distorted it so that you'll never get it. Does that make sense? Like you're wanting to make it simple, but it's not simple. It's complex for you and it's complex for everyone else. And we all want to be loved. So don't put 2 in a box. You want to be loved too, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every type wants to be loved. Every type wants to be seen. Every type wants to be heard. Every type wants to be in control. Every type wants peace. You could go around the whole Enneagram. Every type wants that. The personality is about how did we distort it so that we'll never get it through our fixations and our passions. And with that, it's 12:01. I always promise we end on time. And so I'm